Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to your Daily Penguin, our tour through my Penguin Classic wall, which has largely been unguided and unshaped. We started out with a bit of guidance and a bit of shape because at some point in the distant past, I arranged part of that wall, the early part, into the literature of ancient Greece and Rome, and then the Middle Ages, so that the beginning of this march of the Penguins was maybe deceptively ordered. The rest of it has not been. Largely, we've been bouncing all around, but I've decided to give it a little thought, and I've actually cherished that in this Daily Penguin, that kind of randomness. But I've decided for the rest of October, this great venerable booktube tradition where we talk and exult in all things Victorian, I think for the rest of October, the rest of this week, I will concentrate on great works of Victorian literature. I think there's a bunch of them coming up anyway. And I'm more and more inclined for nonfiction November to do quite a bit of nonfiction, maybe all the rest of my Penguin nonfiction. We might be able to do that in the month of November. I don't know if I'll stick with these plans. I might end up just liking the I'm trying to deal with the lighting in a very amateur way. But finally, I'm getting some use out of Isaac Asimov's Foundation trilogy. It's about bloody time. But, I might change this plan. I might go back to the random stuff that I like. But one way or another, today, we are certainly in the Victorian era, because today we're dealing with the greatest Victorian novelist that no one's ever read, that no one reads anymore. He was a big deal in his day. And his writing life almost exactly coincided with the Victorian era. So he fits. This is George Meredith, and we are talking here about The Egoist, his long and utterly delightful novel about Sir Willoughby Pattern, who's looking for a wife. He is a nightmarish, dystopian distortion of Emma from Jane Austen's Emma. He's shallow and pretentious and loathsome and in love with himself, just totally in love with himself, hence the title. And he's looking for a wife. And Meredith has just a high old time in the course of this novel. It is very long. You might look at it and think that. But the author is having such delight the whole time that he's telling the story that you'll want it to be longer. It's so good, so crystalline sharp and quotable on every page that it's amazing to me that even in the serried ranks of Victober, usually the title for the Victorian novelist nobody ever reads is Elizabeth Gaskell or something like that. Meredith is completely gone. And I'm pretty sure that aside from this book, he has no other representations in Penguin Classic, despite the fact that he was a literary name for half a century and more. This book is his, in other words, is his claim to fame. This is, if you're going to find him, you're almost certainly going to find him in this book. And it's delightful. So I urge you to do that. Your Penguin Classic for today is a very strong recommend. This is, Meredith epitomizes a lot of the strengths that I always talk about when it comes to the Victorians. It was an amazing creative outburst just in the human era. And he also epitomizes an element of Victorian creativity that I often praise and try to highlight, but it doesn't typically get across in the common conception of Victorian literature. Usually people who haven't read any Victorian literature, or even the long Victorian era, which I would extend backwards to include the era of the wicked uncles, which would include Jane Austen. She is, I think, definitely a precursor. And that would extend forward as well into my beloved Edwardian era, but one way or another, people who don't know that era, people who managed to avoid these books when they were in school and have managed to avoid them ever since, tend to look at it and think, well, it might be impressive, but it's deadly dull. It's incredibly humorless. And they have a reason to think that way. And that reason's first name starts with a word that rhymes with smorge, and it ends with a word that rhymes with leliot. Nevertheless, the Victorians were also riotously humorous, riotously funny. The very last people in the world who took them seriously was themselves. And you get that in The Egoist. Oh my, do you get that. This book is alive with that. Sorry, I can hear the objections coming from the back, from the peanut gallery, for the absence of Frida. She is here. She just doesn't want to be bothered with you. That's all. She's just snoozing on the bed. We had a nice long walk, on which she was remarkably behaved. We met a whole bunch of dogs. That ordinarily brings out the stormtrooper in her, and yet it did not this time around. And one of the dogs, oh my, he was adorable, but he was a puppy, and he started swatting her around. Everybody's bigger than Frida. Although we did meet, one of the dogs we met today was smaller than she was, and was delightful. But when puppies start to bounce all around and start to swat with her paws, it's pure playfulness. But when they do it, I shake my head. I want to tell them, oh no, that's not going to go over well. She doesn't like that at all. But she put up with it very well. No, how dare you at all. So she's a little pooped. But anyway, that humor, the humor that I'm talking about for the Victorians, which I believe is every bit as foundational an attribute of theirs as their brilliance or their intelligence or their adventurousness, that humor is all over this book. I'm not saying that Meredith wrote an unbroken string of triumphs. I'm not saying that. There are very few authors you could say that about, and he's not one of them. There are other books that I wish were in Penguin Classic. But all of them are on places like Project Gutenberg. I'd be willing to bet all of them are free to download on your reading device, should you have a reading device. So I'm free to recommend. If he wrote a lot. I mean, he wrote for his whole career. Like so many other Victorians, he was originally destined for a different career, for a non-literary career, and decided right away that isn't going to work at all, and devoted his life to literature and wrote a lot. So it might seem like a daunting undertaking. If that is true, start with The Egoist. It's his masterpiece. Absolutely, start with it. If this book doesn't give you the yen to explore this author a little more, I'll be amazed. So that's your Penguin for today. In furtherance of Victober, we have The Egoist by George Meredith, a great Victorian comic novel. And who knows what we'll encounter tomorrow. I didn't think I was going to do Penguin Classics this weekend, and here I did. So let's hope for that tomorrow. I will wrap this up for now, and I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.